Hi, John Morgan here with the Keep Growing podcast. I guess you could say this is a fresh start because it's been a while. In fact, our last episode aired all the way back in 2020. Now, the excuse that most people seem to give over the last couple years is, well, it was COVID. And yes, it partially was due to COVID. For one, trying to schedule people to do interviews was extremely hard. With trying to, navigate people working from home and different things like that, it was almost impossible for me to book interviews. When I aired the last episode of the Keep Growing podcast, that started what I had planned on being a short summer break while I virtually attended our yearly horticultural conference called Cultivate. Now, it normally takes place in Columbus, Ohio, and it's the largest horticulture conference in North America. And it normally has 15,000 people or so in attendance. Of course, during 2020, it was held virtually. And that went great. And everything was on track for me to start producing new episodes heading into the fall. And then we had a huge problem at Bob's. You see, if you've listened to the podcast in the past, you would know that my normal duties at Bob's Market is as our IT manager. So I manage all of our computer infrastructure, and then I also take care of our online marketing, making videos, and stuff like this. Well, in August, there were hackers that were seemingly attacking businesses almost weekly, you would see on the news. And Bob's Market was no exception. In August, we had a huge cyber attack. Now, luckily, after a forensic investigation, we were able to show that no data was stolen from Bob's Market, but the damage that attack left behind kept me busy for, really years. Just a few months ago, we brought online our last major upgrade from that attack, and that is a backup system. But shortly after the attack, we decided to basically replace our entire infrastructure. Luckily, we were already upgrading our network, so we replaced all of our computers, servers, and as a result of network upgrades, we had to upgrade our phone system, and that stuff takes time. So heading into 2021, we were installing a new phone system and working on upgrading the network. Also in 2021, I decided to focus more on Bob's Live, which is a weekly live streaming show that is actually going to air opposite of this podcast. So every other Tuesday, you're going to be getting an episode of the Keep Growing podcast, and then on alternating Tuesdays during the winter, we're going to have episodes of Bob's Live. So head over to our website and you can check that out. Okay, so heading into this year, 2022, we upgraded our cash registers at all of our stores. So we use a point of sale system, so it's all computer controlled. So that was another huge upgrade that took a lot of time. And then also during all of that, I've been in the process of remodeling my house and everything associated with that. At different times, my wife and I, we've had to move out of our house while we were remodeling. And that's, ate into time that I could be working on things like this. So now things are starting to get back to normal, and I want to keep growing. So, as I said before, my plan for this season of the Keep Growing podcast is to release it during the winter time. So this time of year, there's not a lot to be done out in the garden. So it's a great time to talk about gardening and plan for the future. So the Keep Growing podcast is going to air during the winter time on opposite weeks of our live streaming show, Bob's Live. And the two, they aren't really going to kind of line up as far as topics, but I do kind of want them to go hand in hand with each other. So if you listen to the podcast and you want to interact with me live, check out our live show. We broadcast on Facebook and YouTube, so if you head over to our website, you can find both links to Facebook and YouTube where you can subscribe. And then also we have both the podcast and Bob's Live on our website at bobsmarket.com. So, what are my plans for the podcast? Well, I happen to have my notebook right here in front of me. So, let me flip back a few pages, and I just jotted down some notes. So, of course, we have the return episode, this one. Also, it's winter time, so we're going to talk about some winter gardening tasks, and also late fall gardening tasks, which we're kind of past fall, but we can hit it anyway. I want to talk about garden planning and keeping a garden journal. That's kind of important. In fact, I keep a paper journal. I want to talk about different gardening styles. I've actually changed my gardening style since I started making this podcast and over the last 2-year break. I've done something that I've never tried before, and that is raised bed gardening. So I've converted about half of my garden into raised beds, and then the other half I'm keeping as a row garden. Also during the wintertime, it's a great time to talk about houseplants. Another topic is hydroponics. I actually have a hydroponics system here at my house that I've started using during the wintertime to grow lettuce and some veggies here inside the house during the winter. And then I have a few interviews that I've recorded earlier this year that I plan on incorporating into the podcast. So I'm going to do kind of a few episodes on conservation and also gardening for wildlife. And then we're going to talk about pressing plant specimens, 2023 garden trends. And then also I'm planning on an episode of kind of introducing you to Bob's Market as a whole. So I know a lot of our podcast listeners aren't really direct customers of Bob's Market. We're located in the mid-Ohio Valley. We have 3 store locations here in the Ohio Valley. But if you live outside the area, you've probably never been to one of our stores. So I think it would be important to kind of explain what we do, both on the wholesale and retail side. Those are kind of my plans heading into this winter. And of course, you can subscribe on our website There you can sign up for the mailing list so you get notified whenever a new episode drops. And like I said, there'll be a new episode every other Tuesday this winter. And also on our website, you can click through to our anchor.fm page. And there you can subscribe at all of the major podcast platforms. So we're available on iTunes, Google, Spotify. Also, two recent ones that we've added is Amazon. So if you have Amazon Music, you can now listen to our podcast there. And also, we're now on iHeartRadio. But also over on the Anchor page, you can also leave a voice message. And that's something that I also want to incorporate into the podcast. So if you head over there and leave me a voice message, if it's something worthwhile, it'll probably make it into a podcast episode. And of course, you can always email your gardening questions to keepgrowing@bobsmarket.com. And well, that is all that I have for this first episode of the Keep Growing podcast. Well, I guess it's not really the first episode. First new episode of the Keep Growing podcast. So, until next time, keep growing.